Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, how failure is a necessary requirement for mastery of anything. And I am with ETH University Zurich professor Manu Kapur. So failure is a topic in the self-improvement world, very popular, but I feel it's generally addressed like a motivational talk. Don't let failure get you down. It's part of life. It's not failing. It's trying, which is why I was interested when I heard about Manu Kapur, his work on failure. He's a professor at the same university that I just told you about, where Einstein attended and then taught. And Manu studies learning and growth from a scientific standpoint. He actually developed the theory of productive failure, which is the name of his new book. So he approaches failure completely differently, not as something to cope with if it happens, but something to make sure it happens. And without it, we have less understanding. The point isn't really even failing, it's understanding. And as an example, which we're going to be talking about some, but right off the bat here, I've got two kids with driving permits right now. These are the 6th and 7th kids I've taught how to drive. And we have the benefit of living out on forest roads, so they can start driving with a little more freedom. I don't tell them how to do everything. I give them the basics to get started, and then we get going, and I just try to stay silent. Let them figure it out. Let them look around and try to understand. Maybe they'll ask me a question, but instead of me proactively telling them, let them work it out and figure it out. I even take them into a wet or a snowy parking lot, have them turn until they slide so they get to feel what that's like and not be so fazed by it. It's amazing how much better they drive when they figure this out for themselves. I didn't do this with all my kids. It took a while to learn. And now talking with Manu on his research and findings, I'm like eager to how do I put this in place to push to failure so that there's greater understanding, greater learning. And I would say far less fear. So you're going to hear some paradigm shifting perspectives on using and leveraging failure to help your mastery. And like me, I think it'll make perfect sense to you. Manu's new book, again, which you're going to hear us talking through, is Productive Failure, Unlocking Deeper Learning Through the Science of Failing. Well, friends, you're going to hear some great information when you're ready to integrate that. That's what I'm here to help you with. I'm working with some clients right now who wanted more clarity on what fulfills them and then taking that into their work. One of them is we're starting a new business for her as well. If that's of interest to you, find me at kevinmiller.co or email me at kmiller@kevinmiller.co. All right. Coming up next then is my conversation with Manu Kapur on failure being a necessary requirement for mastery of anything. Let's see what we can learn and apply to our lives today for greater fulfillment. Manu, as I said, when this book came across my desk, it intrigued me because I've seen plenty of books that address failure to some degree. But in this industry, it tends to be from kind of the motivational standpoint. Don't let failure get you down. You can learn from it, yada, yada. And I felt that you took it from a scientific aspect and said, no, this is really a necessary tool for mastery. Yes?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Exactly. As you point out, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of, motivational aspects. So when failure happens, let's learn from it. Right. And as you noted, 2 points. One, I took it to the next level and said, well, if failure is so powerful for learning, we shouldn't be waiting for it to happen. What if we could intentionally design for it deliberately in a safe way and use that to learn deeply? So that was the first kind of a push, the extra step that I took. And second, the extra step was we need to do the underlying science, try to understand the mechanisms of how that works, why it works, when it works, for whom it works, and how would one go about designing such a thing. So it's really taking both the design, intentional design, designing for failure, and then doing the underlying science as well.
Well, I appreciate what you said. Yeah, it feels like, okay, if failure happens, learn from it, but it still felt like it's still something I want to avoid. for
Yeah.
the most part, and you taking it different. So I resonated with it, Manu, with your perspective,
Mm.
because I come from an athletic background, and I thought, well, the point there is to fail. I mean, if you're going to go work out, you work out and, lift your weights until your bicep fails. That's the point.
Yeah.
If you're going to, practice football, tennis, I was a cyclist, whatever, you train to failure. That's the point. And then so we use it as a tool there. And yet over here in life, in school, in business, whatever, that is not
Yeah.
the perspective. So I felt like you were kind of showing us what makes only common sense. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's great to hear that you come from an athletic background. Me too. I used to be a soccer player.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. You train till failure, and then you try and push a little bit beyond that, as you know, right? Just in a safe way, because it's in that zone that your both your mental and physical capacities are developing very strongly. Yeah, it's the same logic in learning as well. Exactly that.
Well,
And in physical training, it's actually a phenomenon called supercompensation. You start at a level of fitness, and then you train until your biceps or your muscles fail, and actually at the micro level your microfibers actually start to rupture. But provided you do this in a safe way that you don't get injured, and then you give it the rest and nutrition, the body adapts, so that in 24 to 42 hours, if you come back and start training, you start training at a higher level of strength than where you started. So
yeah.
again, the logic is very well established in physical training, and part of my work has been to bring it to human cognition and learning. It's the same way.
Well, I like that term, training, that this is I hadn't thought about it that way. This is your failure training. And if you're not doing failure training, I mean, if I'm going to go into business with somebody
Mm,
and they haven't had a decent failure,
mm,
I don't really trust them. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I trust failure. I kind of expect it. Again, just like sports. I mean, you don't have anybody who's always won 100%. I guess, you have the boxer who may be undefeated, but it's very rare for the
yeah,
most part. And even there, they got beaten training, no doubt. They
exactly.
started somewhere and
Exactly.
they got beaten. Why have we gotten this? Well, I mean, obviously it doesn't feel good, but if we should make it a necessary required tool,
Mhm.
it does change the psychology of it dramatically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't feel good because we valued it as such, right? We put a balance on it and say, this is failure is not good. Even though, as you noted, whether you're an athlete or learning something or an entrepreneur, it's going to be part of your process. So I think we just need to renorm that is that if you're not failing early and failing often, then you're not going to be on a growth trajectory that's going to lead you to, either deep learning, strong physical capabilities, or entrepreneurial capabilities. It's just as simple as that.
Well, yeah, thinking about entrepreneurially, gosh,
Mm,
even education wise,
mhm,
it has me thinking if you have not failed, you haven't really tried that hard. I mean, you can't innovate
mhm,
without failure. So if you're just playing it safe and kind of playing small,
mm,
it almost, I could see that on a resume. That'd be a
mhm.
great addition. What have you failed at? And if there's nothing there, I don't trust your
Yeah.
competency.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the failure CV. We put out a success CV, but we don't put out the failure CV. And one of the things I'd really like to see as a result of this book is people putting out their failure CVs, especially people who are really successful. Because we think, as you know, right, we think that, oh, they've always been successful. There is no failure. But if you look behind the successes in different fields, there's a litany of failure, right? I mean, and to put out there, and the reason why I hope people start putting it out there is so that other people who are on that growth trajectory in whatever discipline start to see, oh, this is the norm. This is how it is. Like if I don't fail, I will not grow as deeply as or optimize my capabilities for growth and excellence. So, yeah, that's one of the things that I hope people start to do. The failure CV.
Here, I got a question for you. I read this a really long time ago, Menu. It was some test. And did they really do it, or was it hypothetical? I don't know, but it was showcased as it was something that was really done. And they took two applicants for a
Mm-hmm.
job and
Mm,
made them seemingly identical in every way. The only difference was that with one, the guy,
mm,
it was two guys in this scenario. He confessed to some
mm,
weaknesses and said, I'm really good here,
mm,
but I
mm,
do struggle in this environment and whatever. And they ran the test. And the guy who admitted to some weaknesses got, I'm making the numbers up, but 25, 30% more offers uh,
mm,
in that scenario. And to me, how I, what I extrapolated from it was trust,
mm-hmm.
that if you do have the perfect list of everything, we know you had to have failed. You had to have started somewhere. You cannot be perfect or all competent. And so to come over here and, like you said, give the CV of failure, to me, elicits trust. What have you found?
Yeah, I mean, it's vulnerability, it's authenticity, it's trust, it's a number of those things, and it just gives another person the confidence that this person knows if the seas become rough, how that you can work with this person, and seas are going to become rough from time to time, and so you need somebody who's used to that, who's open to that, and that's one of the reasons potentially why the person got many offers. Yeah.
So let's go into, it really got me thinking about my kids a lot,
Mhm,
Manu, and
mhm,
how, and where I've probably stumbled into doing better on this concept with
mm,
productive failure because
mm,
I'm not a good manager. I'm not really a good director. I just kind of
mm,
look and say, look, here's the result. Do it however, because that's how I want. I want you to tell me what the result is that you want, and then let me figure out how to
mm,
do that.
mm,
I guess that helps. Now it frustrates some of my kids. Some of them like that. Some of them don't. Some people, appreciate that. Actually, I'll come back to personality style. I'll come back to that in a minute. But what I hear you saying
mm,
is that if we give the exact directive on how to do something,
mm,
it can create good competency. You know how to do it and you can perform the task well.
mhm.
So it does that, but it doesn't give you comprehensive understanding. Is that
Yeah, Yeah,
okay?
exactly. I mean, I think it's in the way of efficiency, you can get to doing the procedures fluently, but do you understand them? Do you really, if the situation changes and you need to adapt to a novel situation or a context, then can you do that? And I think those are the capabilities that we need to develop in addition to those fluent procedures and capabilities. And the way to do it is through things like productive failure, which allow you a safe space to first initially experiment and explore, just like a child might do, right? And then the actual sort of instruction, or the correct way or the canonical ways of doing it, is actually important, right? So, but if it comes after the initial exploration and experimentation, then you find that the two work really together. That's what makes the initial failure productive.
Okay, what you said I had not really tapped into in
Hmm.
this, but adaptability.
Oh yeah.
That back to trust. And I was thinking as I was studying your material that if I have an airline pilot that is taught exactly what to do, precisely how to operate it,
Mm-hmm.
and everything goes according to plan, I guess that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when something goes wrong, do they know how to adapt? That's when I want the guy who's the pilot and he goes, oh, yeah, I flew back in the war, or I flew a bush
Yeah.
plane and we can figure out that. Give me some duct tape and some wire. I'll figure, I got you.
Exactly.
As
Exactly.
opposed to the person who's just told it specifically, which I guess gives I guess there's a relevance to looking at what is it that you're doing. Is it always going to be absolutely structured and confined and there won't be any variables?
Yeah.
And if so, then sure, I'll just teach you how to do it. But if there could be,
Yeah.
you've got to you got to have a bigger understanding, which is going to require what you would say productive failure.
Yeah. Exactly. And failure forces you to adapt, and you can't become adaptable unless you've had experiences learning how to adapt. So it's not the case that some people are adaptable and others are not. It's really have they had life experiences which have forced them to adapt? And chances are those experiences involved failure, because
Okay.
failure is a very strong push for adapting, right? Evolutionarily as well, right? I think that's the evolution of the species. It's the same logic underlying that, and the same goes in learning. So what we're trying to say in productive failure then is, can we design the failure that forces people to adapt in a safe way, so that they build not only the capability in that domain, the knowledge and the skill sets in that domain, but they develop it in a way that it's very flexible and adaptive. And that's what you want. You don't. The goal is not just that thing, the capability, but is it encoded in a flexible and adaptive way that you can maneuver in uncertain or changing circumstances. Now, that is historically really hard thing to do, and we just hope that people have had life experiences to do that.
Yeah.
But that's not good enough. Not everybody has had the life experiences to do that. I imagine if you could do that systematically for everybody as they grow up, as they go to school, as they learn things, I think that's the power here.
Agreed. But in making space for it, okay,
Mm,
something occurred to me a moment ago. I'll use the example that you start the book off because I wanted to hit that as well. The one where you have two groups of kids, they're given
mhm,
a toy. Group one is told specifically, hey, we'll show you, here's how the toy works. Push this button, do this, whatnot. And then they're left to play with it freely. And then group two is just given the toy and said, you guys go figure it out.
mhm,
Um, Okay, a new question though that occurred to me a moment ago. How do you, because I'm thinking about my own kids again. Some of
mhm,
my kids would rather that I just give it to them and let them figure it out, which is my style as well.
mhm, mhm,
However, I do have others that are uncomfortable with that. My
mhm,
oldest son was that. I used to just tell him, look, I just figure out how to do it. And he said,
mhm,
as he got older, then he realized, he said, tell me how to do it. I like being given direction,
mhm.
which is fair. How, I guess my question then is, how do you account for with productive failure certain personality styles that may or may not be more comfortable with it?
Yeah, I mean, these are moldable persons. So there'll definitely be individual differences in how people orient towards these, failure-driven or pedagogies and so on and so forth. Ultimately, it's about getting people to feel safe that, look, the goal is not that you will be able to figure it out yourself. I think one of the things that scares people is, will I reach my goal of having figured it out, right? And
Yeah.
so it's the fear that I may not reach the goal by myself. So why do I even bother trying when an expert actually already knows it and they can tell it to me? And so that's where you need a conversation, a changing of the sort of the didactic contract, so to speak, and say, I'm going to ask you to figure it out, at least try to attempt to figure it out, and then if I will actually teach you what the exact thing is, right? And in that combination, you will understand, you'll benefit even from the suboptimal or failed exploration that you did
Yeah.
when I teach. It's this combination of the two that really makes it powerful. And if I know, so if you come and tell me, oh, Manu, go figure it out, and I will tell you later, at least I have this safety net that, okay, I have a space to explore. I'm going to try different things, but in the end, Kevin is going to work with me to get it right, right? And I think that comforts people that it's coming, and when it comes, I will learn better because I've tried it first.
Yeah. Lessening the risk of failure. You're not going to have some big negative
Mm,
consequence. So back to that group, what you showcased is between the groups. Let me see if I've got this right. Between the groups, both of them achieved a good level of competency at
mhm,
running the toy or at playing with the
mhm,
toy, figuring out how it worked. However, group two,
mm,
who was not told how to do it, they had to figure it out. What you came away with there is they were three times more inventive
mhm,
with ways to run it. So inventive, I'm going to put right next to adaptability. Those are both things
mhm.
that
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
value.
Exactly.
Okay.
Invention adaptivity or is the mechanism by which you invent. So if you can't adapt, you can't invent. You can't do anything. You can't be creative. You can't be inventive unless you are adapting something. Yeah. And learning is actually ultimately an adaptive process.
Okay. And I want to jump to learning because
Yeah.
that's a soft spot for me. But with this, I mean, ultimately with productive failure, which is showcased right there in that example with the kids, is you're trying to increase resilience. So if
Mm-hmm.
they've had to figured out what didn't work, you could say that, of course, that bodes well for resilience, for obviously creativity. We talked about that there, and problem solving. That's the big
Mm-hmm.
one for me. And that's the one where I look culturally,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to just be critical, but I'm going to be, I guess. I don't see that our culture right now, if I look at kids, even now, even with my own going to school and whatnot, I don't see that they're really taught. They're not coming away with problem solving skills. They're getting that more at home in the things, when I'm having them run their own business and figure things out, they're getting it there. But the culture does not seem to be as teaching as much problem solving skills. I don't see that being a core attribute that people are
Yeah.
coming out with as much these days as they used to. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely, and this is a call for putting problem solving at the core of all learning, and that's how productive failure starts with the problem solving. You create a context, you create a task, a set of activities where the core challenge is, can you solve it without worrying about getting it right, necessarily, and then we build off it. So it is precisely that. I want to bring problem solving as the starting point of all learning. And it is in that problem solving, when you adapt, when you fail, is when you learn these capabilities of flexibility, inventiveness, and also resilience. Resilience is a learned category. It's a learned skill again. And you don't become resilient unless you've had those experiences which have forced you to be resilient.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And
Well,
the,
look.
the strange thing happens, and an amazing thing happens is the next time you enter these productive failure experiences, you know, that maybe I will not be able to do something, I won't feel good about it, uh, but I can handle it. I think that confidence that if a failure should come again, that I have enough in my training and experience to be able to, even when I don't feel good about it, that I can actually handle it, I can deal with it, and I can grow with it. I think that's an amazing skill to have. And if we don't design these experiences for our children, then when are they going to learn that?
Well, that's right where I was thinking again because I've got a bunch of kids, and I had three kids. We had three kids initially and thought we were done, and then there's a gap, and then we've got a whole bunch of others.
Right.
And I was I don't think that I don't view myself as the controlling, helicopter parent so much.
Hmm.
I'm afraid I was just kind of impatient. I just want it done, and I didn't give the time for them to learn. And then as I had more kids, it was just difficult to micromanage them ultimately. And so I did kind of just bumbled into just figure it out. And
Hmm.
what I saw, as you can imagine, I was blown away with how often they just figured it out. And I
Hmm.
thought, one, I saved myself a heck of a lot of time just selfishly. And two, they understood it. And with some things, I'd realize, oh, they figured out more than what I had known because I had just followed the instructions to learn it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, again, what a gift for kids. But as you said, it takes, gosh, for me, it just took patience to realize,
Yeah,
okay, it's going to take more time as opposed to just
yeah,
telling them what to do.
yeah. And the idea is, even if kids don't figure it out, I mean, and I want to be clear about what productive failure. It's not just getting people to figure things out on their own. It's getting them to start by trying to do so,
Okay.
and then bringing in the expert knowledge. I think the two go to hand in hand because, yes, figuring out, like the example I give in the book about figuring out how a toy works, it's doable. But figuring out how calculus works, it's not,
Right.
right? So and so we have to be mindful that when in setting the right expectations, that okay, here's a situation where you can potentially just figure it out, but here's another where you need to try it, knowing very well that you might not be able to, but I'm here as the expert to guide you later. And I think that's the deal with productive failure.
Okay. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about myself with, the average do-it-yourself project at home or on a car or something with something I'm dealing with, and pull up the YouTube video and I watch a little bit of it. And again, I'm impatient. So I watch a little bit and go, okay, I got it. And I go after and sit there, screw around, and finally go, well, apparently I don't have it. I did not figure it out. So go back, watch the YouTube video, and there's the process. And now today my kids come to me, even though I don't feel like much of an expert with cars, but generally, or not generally, often though, I can just kind of figure it out. I've screwed around with enough stuff to have that general understanding as opposed to an exacting understanding, I guess. Okay. Go to learning then. And again, you had my interest right away with problems of learning. And I want to list through there, but one of the things that I have concerned myself with in recent, years, with myself and with other people in this industry of, call it self-help or, self-improvement or whatever, is we're so inundated with knowledge. We know about so many things. We know so much about so many things. But I realize with myself and with others, doesn't mean we learned it. Knowing the concept is one thing, but to actually learn it, we have to go in there and engage and apply. My word these days is, how do we get a new aspect of knowledge and get people to integrate it? And they've got to take, the old cliche, take action and actually go try something. So when you talk about the problem of learning, to me, it feels like it's almost like a gap right now that people don't understand. They think when they hear something and gain some knowledge, that's learning. Oh, no, that's not learning. And that's a big part of your message. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I detail like what are the reasons why people don't learn. And a fundamental mechanism that I talk about in the book is activation.
Yeah.
Right? So just listening to something, yes, it activates certain parts of your brain and your mind, but that doesn't lead to strong sort of learning. What really leads to strong or deep learning, as I call it, is when you invent ideas or when you try to solve problems, you're actually activating relevant knowledge resources in your mind, in your brain, that actually then create kind of the hooks to which new knowledge can tie, right? And because you have activated several things in a network, when the new things gets processed, it gets processed easier. It's like if you want to learn French and you know a bit of English. Well, French is easier to learn against the backdrop of knowing English than you learning Mandarin against the backdrop of English. There's no connection between the two languages, and there's no alphabet common, there's no words that are common. So it's going to be very hard for you to learn Mandarin versus French if you're an English speaker. The same logic is here. If you're learning something new, it's literally quite as learning a new language. So if I can activate your own prior knowledge resources that are relevant to that, and problem solving and failure does that very well, because then you have to try different things, it creates the necessary conditions to do two things. A, improve processing, because with this knowledge, I can process the incoming information. It starts to make sense, not full sense, but it starts to make sense. And when I make full meaning of it, it gets integrated in a nice way. So I've encoded it deeply. And because I've encoded the information in a network, when I have to use it, I have multiple paths to that knowledge, right? And that's what creates transfer. And they all tie back to the three problems of learning. Can you retain it? Can you understand it? And can you transfer it? And we are able to retain it and understand it and transfer it if we learn it in the right way in the first place. And that's the productive failure way. Yeah.
Dig into those three, because that's what I wanted to ask more on. So when you say, for people listening, chapter 1 on this is problems of learning, and Manu, you say why we fail to remember, and that one is one that I find myself, I haven't thought about it. You got me just thinking about that, and I'm concerned. I have been concerned that my memory capacity, or capability, I should say, I don't exercise it much. I mean, we've all got these little devices, in here in our pockets, and there's so less. It feels like so much less that I need to remember. And yet I'm having conversations like this every
Mm-hmm.
week, once or twice. And the things that I'm interested in, curious about, and
Mm-hmm.
then get to engage. So I guess this is activation. I'm activating
Yes.
it here. And
Exactly.
that I do remember. So I'm not going to remember your phone number, but I
Mm-hmm.
am going to remember what you said that gave value to me and we actively were discussing. So tell
Exactly.
me how that relates to your concept of, or your teaching on remembering.
See, so Kevin, what you've done so far is you've said, I think what you're saying, after reading my book, you said, I think what you're saying in the book is this. So you're giving me your first attempt of making
Okay.
meaning of what I'm trying to say, right? So you've actually engaged with the book and it's kind of activated your knowledge. And then I'm coming in and I'm saying, yeah, it's like this, but it's a bit different, or it's, and I extend it, I deepen it. That's exactly why you remember.
Hmm.
So even in a simple
That's great.
memory task, I don't know if you know Switzerland very well, but if I suppose I ask you the capital of Switzerland, what is the capital of Switzerland, right?
I
Okay,
don't
right.
remember.
I could just tell you. I could just tell you, right? Oh, this is the capital of Switzerland. And 6 months later, I'll ask you, Kevin, do you remember the capital of Switzerland? Or I could put you in a spot here and say, hey, can you guess? Just make a wild guess. What could be the capital of Switzerland? And you might, say something. And here's the thing, especially if you don't get it right, and then I tell you. So suppose you say the capital of Switzerland is. You want to have a go at it? Do you want to have a go at it?
I'm paying it. Yes. But I'm also paying attention to my brain because you said that, and we're sitting here recording, so people are going to hear how ignorant I might be. My brain is working on it, so I'm totally activated, and I'm thinking, okay, what is that? Is that? I'm thinking of one. I'm thinking, is that even in Switzerland? I think that's a different country because my
Yeah.
first thought was Zurich.
Yeah, I live in Zurich. So a lot of people say it's Zurich. You see, now you've said let's say your answer is Zurich, right? And your brain worked on it. It made a guess. It's Zurich, and you're not sure. So your emotions are also being charged here. You're running your emotions, right? Oh, I'm anxious, and not to the point that it's debilitating, but
Yeah.
you're in a very good state where knowledge is activated and your arousal state is very high. And now I'm going to tell you, Kevin, that the capital of Switzerland is not Zurich. It is
Oslo.
Bern. It's
Oh,
Bern.
shoot. Okay.
See
Ah,
now,
Oslo's
Kevin.
Norway, anyways. That's a wrong country. Okay, so there we go. Okay, well now Burke, I will remember that
It's
likely.
exactly now. No, you will. I trust you because it's encoded with your emotions as well now. And that's what I talk about in a part of the book. Perhaps we'll get to it. The mechanisms. So activation is just the first set of mechanisms, and then there is the awareness mechanism that you realize there was a gap in what you know, right? And just
Yeah.
the knowledge of that gap also gets encoded. So the next time you have to retrieve this information, you say, "Oh yeah, I tried this, and there was a gap in my knowledge, and it didn't work, and then I learned it." But awareness alone is not sufficient. You want to bridge that gap, which I did for you, but it created the certain set of affect, emotions, anxieties that supercharge your memory, basically. Right? If you go back to things that you actually remember, chances are the emotions and the affect is very strongly encoded. So I just created, in a very
Yeah.
simple toy example here, these conditions of activation, awareness, and a strong affect, an emotive charge. And once this system was ready, then I gave you the answer, the assembly. And I said, this is it. Now you will remember this, Kevin. You will
Yeah.
definitely remember this.
It,
Because
it's
you'll
it's
spend the
uh
time.
I think this past Christmas menu, somebody gave us a box of some game or whatever, but it's ultimately just trivia questions in
Mhm,
essence.
mhm.
That we hadn't done anything like that as a family. We do a lot of questions, but they're more just subjective type things, not actual facts. And so it was real. Everybody's really interested in it
Yeah.
because we don't often do that, and they did that. So we'd read the card,
Mm.
and not and kind of hide the answer even from ourselves if we're reading it, and I'll sit there and go, wait, what is that? And they
Mm.
so enjoyed it, and now it helps me to see why it's so intriguing for us to try to come up with the
Yeah.
answer. I love that process of letting your brain chew on something to go,
Yeah.
gosh, what was that movie? I know that line came out of it, and to let it chew. And then you go on and let a couple minutes pass, and then boom,
Yeah.
It's, your brain's working on it and it comes back and you remember it.
Yeah.
So the first problem of learning that you had there was remembering. Now the next one, and this is the one that I've been
Mm-hmm.
focused more on for a long time, is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really understand it? We may know the answer like that. You're talking about we may know how to do XYZ activity to
Mm-hmm.
turn it on, make it work, blah, blah, blah. But do we actually understand it? And it feels like, again, I wonder, well, you tell me if culturally we're at a place where we've learned to do a lot of the specific things, but we don't have a very comprehensive
Mm-hmm.
understanding.
Yeah, and part of the reason we don't. So if you think about it, to understand something, you need to obviously know what that thing is. But the knowing of what that thing is tied to what it is not. So you cannot understand something deeply if you do not know what it is not. So
Hmm.
so you can't understand what a dog is until you see something that is not a dog. So
Okay.
right.
Can we say contrast?
Contrasts, exactly. Contrasts are a big counterfactuals, right? So if you want to
Hmm.
learn to do something, you need to know how it is not done, and that's the part that failure is so good at. That it activates knowledge, but if it's done in a way that you get to parts of the knowledge that don't work, and then you learn how it works, then you have this contrast encoded. Then you know, oh, it is not this way, because understanding comes in the why, right? Why does it work the way it does? And to
Yes.
be able to explain somebody why it is the way it is, you need to be able to say, oh, if it was any other way, it would not work,
Okay.
or it would not work. It would not work as well. And where do you get this other knowledge from? It's from failure. It's encoding that process where you try to invent and be creative and explore, where things you figure out all the things that are not working or not working as well, and then you learn how it actually works. It's that coupling that creates deep understanding, because that's when it's integrated very tightly. So you can go back and look at all the things you deeply understand. Chances are both of these aspects are deeply encoded.
It's got me thinking about things because kind of questioning, what understanding do I need to understand something that well? If I'm going to make an analogy that I'm
Mm,
thinking of. I live in an area where there's a lot of mountain biking. A lot of people mountain bike, and if you're mountain biking, it's a trail, that's
mm,
just around town or whatever. I think a lot of people, they don't really know how it works. They just get on and they go.
mm,
However, if we're going to go out on a big epic adventure like I do with some guys, where we're going to be 20, 30 miles out.
uh,
Um, and if something goes wrong, you got to know how to deal with it. That they'll
yeah,
literally say you have to have these tools with you. You've got to have this
mm,
understanding,
mm,
and to take that then back to regular life. And there are some things that I don't care to know that much.
mm,
The remote control turns the TV on. How does it work? I don't know. How does it do X, Y, Z? I don't know. I don't care. And if something goes wrong with it, I'm probably not going to figure out. I'm going to call somebody to deal with
right,
it.
yeah,
But that's different than other areas where, especially in my vocation where I'm being paid, I need to know how to be adaptable, how to be innovative, intuitive, creative, all the resilient, all these things that you're
mm,
saying. So to go along, I'm going to look at those things and go, man, those are areas where I need to understand what to do in a place of failure.
yeah. And that's a good metric, or a good sort of filter to decide when do you want to use something like productive failure to learn. It's really meant for things that you need to deeply understand and transfer, and be adaptable. You don't need to use productive failure to learn things that maybe you don't need to understand. you know, maybe, learn, like you said, remote control. You don't need to understand how it works, but that's your choice. Then somebody else might be a geek and say, no, I really want to understand how a remote control. But it's a choice, right? It's a decision we make. What is it that I really need to deeply understand? And for those things, productive failure really works really very well.
Looking at that, going from, I kind of made a list here, or brought it out of the book of, we start with knowledge, then we go to wanting to learn something, how to do it, and then fully understand it,
Mm,
integrate it into our lives. And then I came to thinking of just mastery and wisdom. What are the things that I want mastery in those? I have got to put myself in a place where I can productively and even constructively
Mm.
fail. If I don't do that, there is no opportunity for mastery. Yeah, it's got me thinking about areas in my life that I have not allowed. Where have I not allowed? Where do I want more mastery? I want more progress. And where have I not allowed myself
Mhm.
to fail? And I'm sure that, again, you know this from the workplace, that there's a lot of people that are even going to hear this that may not be in a place where they feel like they have the
Mhm.
space and the
Mhm.
permission to
Mhm.
fail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whether I'm working with people or companies, I ask people to describe to me their failure signals. So, like
Okay.
throughout your life, like what are your failure signals? Where are you getting the failure signals from? That there are things that you tried and you couldn't do. And I said, pay attention to those things because those are the look. Those are the zones where you can learn. You have the potential to learn really deeply. And if somebody tells, I have no failure signals in my life, work, play, whatever, then I say, you're not growing at all. So be mindful of that too. So again, it gives people a certain perspective, because if you're trying to innovate, if you're trying to build new capabilities, you have to get into the zone which is above your current capabilities. By definition, you're in a zone where there are things you cannot do. So you will fail, you will feel the stress, you will struggle. I mean, and these are all normal things to feel when you're in this zone where you're trying to grow, right? And so I want people to be able to locate and say, oh, actually, for this, I'm in this zone. For something else, I am not. And very simply, I talk about it in terms of learning versus performance. So we all
Okay.
have, if you're in your job, if you're a surgeon or a pilot, right, you've built up capabilities. And when you're performing, there is no room for failure. Like you don't want your surgeon to fail, you don't want your pilot to fail, you don't want your car driver to fail, whatever, right?
Right.
The performance zone is you need to know this is my performance zone. I'm taking everything that I've learned and I'm going to try and do this as successfully as possible. Excuse me. But there is also a learning zone where you're trying to build new capabilities. And in this learning zone, it is not performance that counts. It is actually your ability to learn, to fail, to adapt, to learn, and so that's when that's what builds the capability. And this is where the failure signal is more often than not available or visible or describable. And so I want people to know, okay, which is your learning zone and which is your performance zone. And failure operates differently in these two zones. The growth zone is the learning zone where failure has to be there. Performance zone is you're delivering something based on what you already know, and that's that you don't need failure. Ideally, there's no failure there, and that creates a good way to think about everything that you do in life.
Well, okay. So I really like that concept because I would think that it's easy for us to get into the regular rhythm of life, the grind, as people would call it, and spend all of our time performing. We learned how
Hmm.
to do it. And so we go through and day after day, we show up, we do the thing, we perform, and we never put ourselves in that place to learn. I was thinking back to sports again. I mean, we've got, here in America, the Super Bowl's coming up. Of course, that's,
Hmm.
such a huge thing. And in the Super Bowl, those two teams are going to come and they are in 100% performance mode. They're not going to try anything. They've done that, but they spend all their time in training, trying stuff
Hmm. Hmm.
and learning and seeing what doesn't work, what works, what's a good
Yeah.
idea, fail, 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 and then come out and perform. But I'm wondering if, well, I'll ask you then, if you find that most of us in our lives tend to be in a place where we just perform day in and day out and we never grow then, right?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's a conscious or an unconscious decision we make. And the psychology is such that you always want to be comfortable, right? It's not, you don't deliberately want to be uncomfortable. So you take the path of least resistance. And so if you've built up certain capabilities, then if you can live your life performing those capabilities, then it's very comfortable. It's the grind, but you never grow. And it's only when you realize, or if you want to realize and then act on it, that you really want to grow, then you go into the learning zone. Then there's no choice but to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Okay, it just dawned on me, Manu, a great example of that. So I have my, oh my gosh, what is this? I'm teaching the three, four, five, six, seven, the seventh kid in my family to drive. Okay, so I've
Ah.
gotten the seventh kid who's getting ready to drive, and so he's got his permit.
Mm,
So I'll get out of the car at a certain point and let him drive. And driving home we live up in the mountains, and it's a
mm,
little pass that goes up that's often snow covered. So he's not just learning to drive, he's learning to drive on
mm,
snow. And he's kind of figuring it out. But I told him this last week and didn't think about this
mm,
concept, that I said, okay, we need to go to a parking lot somewhere, or a parking lot in essence, after the next snow. And I need to let you go out there and lose it. I need you
mm.
to break free so you can feel what it feels like. I don't want you breaking free on the road right
Yeah,
now that we're driving with other
exactly.
kids in the car and me in the, and other cars there. So you're performing right now. Please perform
Mm,
well. But now, if you're going to understand, it's a great
mm,
example. I hadn't thought about it. If you're going to understand how this works and be adaptable, be resilient,
mm,
because at some
mm.
point you're going to be in and the car is going to slip a little bit. Let's just go
Yeah,
out and let you slip. I mean, that's a
yeah.
perfect
In a,
analogy. Yeah.
uh-huh. In a safe way.
And to say, right.
You created the learning of that important skill and adaptability around that skill in a safe environment where the stakes are low, where the risk of injury is or loss of life is low. And that's precisely what we want to use. That's how we want to use failure, is to use failure in a safe way. So that when it matters, I call it fighting failure with failure. So when failure
Hmm.
matters, when the stakes are high, you want to reduce the likelihood of failure. And it turns out that the way to reduce the likelihood of failure when it matters is to use failure deliberately when it's safe to learn.
Yeah. Get comfortable with it. I love I'm sitting here thinking about other areas in my life. Even this, should
Yeah.
I set myself up to, I mean, I guess I could ask, I could start playing with, really controversial questions, or I don't know, I'm kind of playing with that. I don't, I'll have to think how that relates, but if I want to expand, if I want to get better, then how can I give myself the opportunity to fail
Mm.
in a non-catastrophic way? It's so good. I want to hit the mechanics like you talked about, because
Mm.
what we just did a minute ago with you asking me the question,
Mm.
I so appreciate that. It helped me understand, and now I remember activation.
Yeah.
So to activate it, and I'm thinking about that with myself, my kids,
Mm.
but go a little more into that. Actually, I got a question on how do we most often miss out on the opportunity
Mm.
for activation? And maybe you just showcased it. So instead of me saying, "Hey, kid, the capital of Switzerland is Berg," I just told you. I let them not have any. It's just simply asking the question and letting them chew on it. Is
Yeah.
it that simple?
Yeah, it's really that simple. It's really that simple. It's the cognitive effort has to come from the person who wants to remember it and understand it deeply. And the more you place the cognitive burden on the person, the better. So again,
Hmm.
another analogy is like, when a child learns how to say walk.
Yep.
Suppose the child is at that cusp of learning how to walk, you know, and you see that your child has tried to get up and then he falls back, and then you see again he gets up and he falls back.
Yep.
What do you do as an adult? You can say, okay, let me hold you, let me get you up, right? Maybe I can just hold you and we can try to walk. That's one way, right? And that's a very heavily scaffolded, support him in all the way to maybe able to walk. But there's another way. There's several other ways, right? You could sit next to the child and show him, without supporting him, just show him how to get up. Maybe the child looks at you and wants to do exactly what you're doing, right? That's also a way of learning, right? But what this way does, at least in the first instance, it places all the effort on the child,
Hmm.
right? And that's when it activates, more fully activates the entire knowledge and physical capabilities as a whole. And say after you do that, the child still is not able to. Maybe you give them just a pinky and say, okay, you hold my pinky and try to get up. Now, why pinky? Because it's the minimal amount of support. It's just that little bit, because what that would do is, yes, you realize the child really needs some support, but let me give the minimum And maybe with this minimum support, the child will then be able to, because that what that would do is, again, it forces the child to put in the maximal effort, and that activates much more broadly, much more deeply, all the capabilities required just to use that support and get up. It's the same with cognition, right? If I just give you the answer, it's like me holding you, picking you up, and moving from A to B. Whereas what I really want you, if I want you to understand, and if you want to understand yourself deeply, then I want to keep placing the effort on you without breaking you, like in a safe way. That's what I
Hmm.
meant, right? So support is important. Giving correct instructions and knowledge are important. But if you want people to understand them deeply, you want first them to make the effort of activating their capabilities in a strong way. And then when the support comes in the amount that is needed, in a way that it places the effort on them, that's when you learn deeply.
I'm thinking about ways to do it with my kids, how much I can expand
Yeah.
on probably where I thought I was doing it more. And now I'm seeing, oh my gosh, how much more I can do it. But then to own it for myself and to think about, how can I apply this to myself? This last weekend, I went and did some backcountry skiing for the first time. And I
Yeah.
was with some guys and I wasn't asking them how to specifically do it, but to think of my propensity there, and I'm thinking this bodes well for this for activation, is to
Mm,
look around. Okay, I'm going to do this. First off, just stop before asking exactly how to do it, and just start watching people,
mm,
and just look around and go, okay, what's the concept here? What are they doing? This is not like normal skiing, and the
mm,
boots are different, the skis are different. And what are they doing? And
mm,
giving myself however long to look around and try to discern and understand it, that's
mm.
activation as opposed to saying, okay, dude, tell me exactly what to do. Is that
Exactly. Yeah.
I try? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So activation. The next one then is awareness. So define that
Mhm.
for us.
So awareness is knowing that the limits of your own knowledge. So it is knowing that here's what I can do without any help or support, but that's the limit. And if I want to reach the next level, here's the gap between what I know or what I can do and what I need to be able to do. Just the awareness that there is a gap, and very specifically where that gap is a very important mechanism for learning. Because normally people don't, you have a general sense, oh, I don't know calculus, so maybe I should go learn calculus. I don't know skiing, maybe I should go learn skiing. I don't know how to dance salsa, then maybe I should go and learn salsa, right? There's an awareness that there's so many things we cannot do. That's good, that can motivate us to do certain things. But what failure does is that it activates that awareness in a very specific way. You try multiple things, none of them work out. And so it's not a general awareness that, oh, here's something I don't know. It's a very specific awareness that I tried many ways and they don't work. And so I have a very specific set of things, ways of knowing that, here is the limit of my knowledge. Here is the limit of my capability. And just knowing that limit specifically is a very strong, you encode that information
What
quite strongly.
you saying that I hadn't thought about this, Manu, but to do this well, I mean, again, if we want, I'm going to say mastery, wisdom, we want really, significant comprehension. To do this is going to require me to have a level of humility,
Oh, yeah.
even vulnerability to
Hmm.
say that, because this is going to not, you have, would it be fair to say you got no chance at this if you got some identity issues and you have to be the know-it-all, but
Hmm.
then you're done
Yeah.
basically. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Absolutely. And if you look at experts around, like in any domain, one of the key features, we always focus on their skills and capabilities and knowledge. But one of the things that true experts also have is this humility,
Hmm.
right? They develop this humility by virtue of their developing their expertise. It's
Yeah.
something that evolves hand in hand. And because if you've developed high levels of expertise, chances are failure has been an integral component of that. And so
Yeah.
the higher you go, the strange thing happens. You become more and more humble. At least you may not show it, but internally you know Yeah, as the saying goes, the idea, no, not the idea, the signal that somebody really knows a lot is to know their own ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a great gosh. People listening. Well, we had recently Stephen. I had Stephen T. Collis on the show. He's a
Mm,
professor of law at University of Texas, Austin, and he is an expert in the First Amendment. So the country utilizes him to deal with First Amendment issues and to come in
mm,
and help with that. And to just an example of what you said, because his book is The 10 Habits of a Peacemaker. His point is
yeah,
peace and coming together. And he says, so here I am. He says, I'm an expert on the First Amendment. He says, chances
mm,
are I know more than anybody who's going to hear this
mm,
possibly knows. And he says, I'm guessing that he says, in my perspective, I'd say I know about 5% of what there is to know.
yeah,
And because the first lesson in his book is you just don't know as much as you think you do. So
yeah,
back to your aspect. Okay. Well, I appreciate us pulling that out. That feels
yeah.
so important. So we're looking at activation, awareness, not and knowing what you don't know as well. The next one is affect. So explain that
Affect,
first.
yes.
Affect.
So
Yes.
affect is the idea that once we have a gap, it's human psychology to want to bridge that gap,
Hmm.
right? And that creates the right interest. So your interest in learning. So when I asked you, when I told you that, oh, Zurich is not the capital, you said, oh, what is the capital? I want to know what the capital is. Your interest arbitrarily went very high in Switzerland, in the capital of Switzerland, right? So your interest in knowing, wanting to know goes up, and that's a positive affect, right? Your orientation towards, now in this case, it's a toy example, so it's not, but if it's something conceptual, you also want to know why, right? So your motivation is not just to learn that thing, but to understand it deeply. I tried so many ways of solving a problem, they did not work. I want to now know how to solve it, and B, when some expert teaches me how to solve the problem, I really want to understand why it
Yeah.
works. Right? So my motivation, my interests are geared towards mastery, not just achievement. I want to really deeply understand. Right? So that's a positive. Those are sort of signals of positive affect. But there's
Okay.
more going on. There is frustration. Oh, I could not solve this problem. There is shame. What? I did not know how to solve this problem. What? I
Can't
did not
believe I didn't
know.
know the capital.
I
So
can't believe I couldn't know the capital of Switzerland, right? So there's shame. And it turns out these emotions, we're always used to thinking that positive emotions correlate positively with learning. Yes, they do. And negative emotions correlate negatively with learning. Yes, they do. But not all the time.
hmm,
A
hmm.
certain amount of stress, a certain amount of frustration, a certain amount of negative emotion and anxiety is actually good. If it's done in a safe way, it's actually good for you to learn when you encode information because that supercharges. I mean, we know from neurobiology and brain behavior, it supercharges whatever it is. It supercharges your attentional networks, it supercharges your processing networks and encoding information. So if you can bring in this, you're an athlete. Let me give you an example. You don't want to piss off. Sorry for the words. You don't want to make the star player or the players on the other side necessarily angry, because that brings out a different beast in them.
Hmm.
And you don't want them to get that anger or that the emotions to supercharge their capabilities. We know this in athlete. You want to know for whom you pick, it will sort of destabilize them, and if you pick on somebody else, it will supercharge them, right? And so it's the same thing for your memories, for your understanding. Supercharging them a little bit in a safe way is actually give you that boost, right? So that's the affect,
To-
both
I,
the
it
positive
totally
affect and the negative.
It totally makes sense. I'm thinking of Rick Hansen, who wrote the book Hardwiring Happiness, and he makes the case that the negative things that happen to us stick. We remember them because there's that emotional to that,
Yeah,
and the happy things we tend to appreciate, but we don't make that same mental divot in essence.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
he's calling us to do that. So next time something good happens, really recognize it, sit with it, let it resonate, exaggerate it, even celebrate it, even and hardwire the happiness in. So for what you're saying, the things that I am best at, I remember the failures because there's that. I'm going to remember that on a podcast that tens of thousands of people are going to hear, I did not know the capital of Switzerland. And my kids can give me crap at that. Instead, I said, and I even said Oslo, which I think is the capital of Norway.
Right.
Okay, so I got one of them. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Manu. Well, and then the last one here on this segment is assembly. And I'm looking at the contents. I like you have identified the Lego blocks, assemble the Lego blocks. I just had 2 kids when I left the house who were doing a Lego a design, some car or something like that, and they were doing that. So explain assembly.
So assembly is the idea that can I take all the pieces, all the things that you've created, the solutions or the ideas, can I take parts of those solutions and ideas and reassemble them into the correct knowledge, right? And I think that's like, if you generate a solution, the chances are there's some parts of the solution that are actually good, and others may not be workable. So when I assemble as an expert with you, I would say, this part is actually not bad. This part is not usable. Let's take this part and connect it with, and then I build. That's why I give you the Lego block analogy. This assembly is critical because that takes everything that you've done and puts it together into some kind of a canonical form that you were not able to do it yourself. And that's the part that has to come from the expert. Right? That's what makes it. The activation, awareness, and affect are the 3 mechanisms that prepare you to learn, and then the expert comes and assembles the learning in the correct way or in the correct ways, right? And together, these 4 A's, of productive failure, that's what makes for learning. Yeah.
Manu, I mean, obviously, I had you on the show. I was excited about how you explain these, but I'm much more excited now as we've been in activation and I've been able to do this. Honestly, it just has me exciting, inspiring myself with this concept and thinking, my gosh, I have so much opportunity to engage with this with my kids that I've been missing more so than I thought. And then even with myself, with some of the things and that I want to have better understanding, creativity, resilience with, then I need to let myself push the envelope in essence and fail, but do it like taking my kid to the snowy parking lot where there's not going to be a big consequence and let them learn to fail. I get it so acutely in some areas, but I just haven't brought it over into some of the other areas of life, which again is why you wrote the book. So I just thank you. I'm grateful for the message. I'm grateful to put this out. I'm grateful to share it I'm eager to share it with my family and share it, but actually just employ it as well as a dad to sit there and think about, how can I help them by not giving them the exact directive on how to do it, but let them have the working on it. And thank you, because I was about to say figuring it out. And you're saying they may not even figure it out, but you give them the opportunity to sit there and say the wrong capital of Switzerland. It will help them remember for the rest of their lives that it's Bern. So,
thank you.
Man, thank you for the book, for the effort to bring it forth. I know what that's like, and for being here with the show and for teaching me. I'm a grateful recipient. Thank you, Manu.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me and for your support for the book and its message. And
Absolutely.
I really had a great chat. Thank you.
Me too. Well, friends, thanks for joining us in this conversation. That again is University of Zurich professor Manu Kapur, and the book that we talked about throughout this conversation is Productive Failure. And the point again is deeper learning, deeper understanding. I hope that resonated. If you got questions on it for myself or for Manu, let me know. You can find me at kevinmiller.co, or you can email me at kmiller@kevinmiller.co. I hope this episode helped you get more clarity on pursuing your deep fulfillment.
Yeah.